All right. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Another episode of Wild Wisdom and Herbal Storytelling with Herbal Elder Blaine Andrusek. Look at this backdrop we got. Yeah, we got the nicest seat in the house here.
We could be anywhere in Western Canada right now.
For sure. We can hear the river. We're right beside the Bow River. It's quite swollen, and we're in one of your old kind of stomping grounds.
I used to live not far from the park for quite a while, just in a basement suite, and would come to the park regularly, and determined beyond any shadow of doubt in my mind that I guess you'd need a water filter, but there's enough fish and there's eddies out there. There's fish right now, right there in that eddy below the bridge standard.
Oh, totally.
You cast past it,
Yeah.
and then start winding back through the eddy, and you get a fish every cast.
No way.
Yeah, and they'll be mostly trout.
Really?
There's whitefish too.
Yeah.
But so between fish,
Yeah.
and there's herds of mule deer that pass through here.
Yeah, totally.
Quite often, the big herds, like 20 deer kind of thing, that you're
Wow.
trampling. And so we got water, deer, red meat, fish, and there's enough herbs here that I was convinced you could put a teepee up here and raise a family with 3 kids. Like just live here
Yeah.
in this park. That's about all as far as you'd have to go.
Yeah. So this
Which,
is-
considering that it's becoming the middle as the
right.
place keeps growing, right?
Yeah.
It just, basically in central Calgary, we've got that sort of place. And as you've mentioned in the past, most people just walk on by.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a plant walk last night, what I call first time foraging, and I say the first step is just awareness, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. And I like teaching those first time ones because, I love taking people on plant walks anytime, any level, any experience, but especially first time, like people are just so blown away, right? And I always joke, like to say it's a walk is not really a walk because literally we walk 2 steps, we go, oh wait, there's another plant here, let's talk about this one. And
I had enough wild plants in my 25-foot lot that
Right.
I did one that I literally called a no-walk herb walk.
right.
And it was going to include all food, including wild run salmon and margaritas in the works. But at the end of the day, I thought, well, I'm never going to do that again because half the people had too many margaritas and wouldn't remember a thing. Right? But
It sounded good at the time, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed themselves. But what I've noticed, and it's certainly been my experience. I don't know how many plant walks I did with you, and I could talk about any plant anytime because as we're walking over here, you're like, okay, plantain, we've done that, and I'm like, but I'd hear it again, and part of the journey of the path is that repetition, right?
Yeah.
And I know for myself, when I'm especially teaching about plants, like, okay, all right, let's talk about poplar, but you can never get everything in all the time. And
you forget things. There's so much to cover with some of the plants. And
yeah.
then what that fosters is, especially when you've actually used some of the plants, you've eaten them before, they rather become your friends.
Yeah.
So just like friends, you need to maintain the relationship. So as soon as you get out of the vehicle, you're sort of, oh, there's some yarrow here. Hi, yarrow. And there's some plantain, of course. And hi, everybody. It's as if you're talking to angels.
Yeah, totally. No, I've heard that analogy a lot, and I'll often use it as well. Okay, so awareness is the first thing that, what is out there, what's possible is potential. And then it's just like meeting somebody new for the first time, right? Like there may be a certain sense impression. I know we've all experienced like, okay, an old growth Douglas fir, or if you've been to California in the redwoods, like literally, or the most beautiful orchid flower. Like sometimes like that first impression can really take your breath away, as maybe a person can too, right? But it's a relationship in the sense of like, oh, hello, like meeting somebody, just paying attention, like, oh, and then learning their name. Maybe that's the first thing. And then you learn kind of like, oh, hi, I'm Blaine, like, what do you do? Like there's that typical niceties. And I know with herbalism, there's always that idea of, not, just is what it is. We tend to put plants in a box of like, okay, this is yarrow, this is what it does, this is what it's good for. That to me, that's kind of like, hi, I'm Blaine, I'm a herbalist, but there's so much more depth to who you are, as a person, just the same with a plant. And we can learn a lot about you as a herbalist, but as we go deeper into that relationship.
These leaves just caught my eye. I'm pretty certain
Look at that.
that this is Spirea.
Spirea. Okay.
which is, by definition, a herb is anything that's green and falls back at the end of the season. If it has a stem that makes it through winter and the leaves come back, then it's called a shrub.
Right.
And this is actually called a dwarf shrub. Like, no kidding, that's the whole plant.
Right.
So I didn't take the root. But this is one that, it's a big part of the aspirin story.
Right.
So Spirea is where aspira, like that's where the name came from, right?
Right, yeah.
And as opposed to some of the other sources we have, this is the plant that Dr. Bayer, and I used to think Dr. Bayer was some genius working in a room somewhere, but Bayer's a huge pharmaceutical company. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's like a couple of city blocks. And but anyway, this is the one that they modeled the actual molecule after.
Right.
So chewing this up would still be good for any sort of pain or wound or whatever. And it comes two ways. It has a corym. Corym is where you have a whole bunch of little flowers attached at one point, but it's all branching. So if you have from one point a bunch of little subtending stems called rays that all go the same direction from one attachment, that's called an umbel.
Umbel, right.
Right? But if there's branching, like yarrow isn't an umbel because it's got all that branching underneath, right? So it has a corym of white to pinkish flowers, and it's so thick that when they were dried, this is one of the things that painting large areas on a teepee, this was a handy paintbrush, almost more like sponge painting, that they would dip into whatever they were using to, say, do a bear on the side of their teepee, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But mostly a pain plant. Spirea, just, there it is.
There it is.
How far did I have to go for that?
Totally. Yeah, and then so that's the Latin name, Spirea. Common name?
I think it just meadowsweet.
Meadowsweet. Yeah, yeah. Nice. And yeah, very abundant around here. So did we mention we're in Edworthy Park? That's where we're at. I can't remember if we said that.
Oh, I thought we survived a plane crash and we were just in the jungle somewhere.
I just happened to find this bench here. Yeah, and what I love about Edworthy Park is just the diversity. There's a number of different little ecosystems. So here we are, like right by the river. We've got the willows, we've got the cottonwoods, the spirea, the dogwood, and just a little bit further away, we'd get into kind of that north-facing slope with the Douglas firs and beautiful forest in there. But then also kind of at the base, you can get into, yeah, there's some like ponds and cattails.
I was going to say there's some little boggy-woggy places where you'll find, I've got sweetgrass over there.
Sweetgrass?
Cattails we could talk about for a week.
Yeah.
Better if we did that with some plants, I think.
Yeah.
But it's literally a forest of food. Like cattails are harvested commercially in Russia as a starch source. I've eaten many parts of the plant many different ways over the years. So, yeah, just to pull a number loosely, I'm going to guarantee there's at least 70 species here.
Right. Wow.
That's quite a few things.
Yeah.
You know, you could write a thesis on that.
And in fact, I mean, it's called Edworthy Park because it was the Edworthys, Anno Jan, from that family. She's been a customer, and it was her family that homesteaded this area that then donated the land to the city.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there's actually a spring up on the hill too, where, I mean, it's still fairly modern, like piping. There's like a PVC pipe that comes down from the hill where the spring is. So somebody in recent times, I don't know how far back, had tapped that for their water source.
So what I said earlier about needing a water filter, then there's your fresh water.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I just got a giggle out of there's a big sign there that says, "Caution, life jackets must be worn." But, you know, where?
Where, exactly,
in the grass?
yeah.
Or, you know, it's just kind of interesting. I like signs.
Looks like he's doing a bit of a dance on that sign too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You saw roses? Were any of them in bloom?
Right here, yes. Okay, we've got a bud, and we've got...
Is there an open one?
Yeah. Oh. All right, the wild rose. rose.
There's our provincial emblem, of course, everybody knows. So this is what's called a perfect regular flower. And what that means is it has all of the parts a flower can have. It has petals and sepals and stamen, guys, that's the boy parts of the plant.
Right.
And an ovary. And everything is in groups of fives. See, there's 5 petals and 5 sepals behind, kind of like some gear to hold up the party dress, right? And that's what's attracting attention for the bugs, of course. And so it's perfect. And in any set, like the 5 petals are all the same. And the sepals are all the same, and the stamen are all the same. So that's what makes it regular.
Oh, okay.
So that's the loose, and because it's all in 5s, we know it's a dicotyledon. So there's so much, you can talk just about the flower. Now, they taste a little bit soapy, perfumey, but the flowers are totally edible.
Yeah.
The buds, like you've got in your left hand, those are edible, or, you could make tea with those.
For sure.
And sometimes when we find wild roses, they'll be 2 acres thick with them, right?
Yeah.
Like the landscape's pink. That one's the things, Terry brought that up, wondering if I could replicate the wild rose liqueur that I made years ago.
Oh.
So a fellow named Damon Johnson, a dear friend of mine, and we went for a bit of a hike from a base camp set up for weekends camping, and we went up this hillside, or came down a different way, and there was a valley that was just pink with roses. And I immediately flashed to a recipe, and there used to be I guess they're still out there, a book series called the Wildfire series.
Oh, yeah,
and They were
or
all
Wild
about,
Fox? Is it Wild Fox or Wild? Maybe I'm thinking of something different.
I don't know. They were...
almost like a magazine or something, then compiled into
no.
number of volumes?
No.
Oh, okay.
Severe hardcover books.
Right.
And they were back to when so many young people were doing it was the whole hippy-dippy days of communing and things.
Yeah.
So these were the guides, because they included things like how to turn your goat into a banjo, like how to build a butter churn, all of those sorts of things, along with a lot about wild plants. And one of the recipes called for 5 pounds of rose petals.
Right.
And I thought,
5 pounds.
who would ever have time to pick 5 pounds of rose petals, right?
Yeah.
But Damon and I, we had a couple of just bread bags from our lunch or whatever, and we just started stuffing bags with petals, and at the end of the day, by golly, we had a couple pounds of rose petals.
Wow.
So what are we going to do with them? Good question. Do you like jelly that much? Well, not really. We had a next door neighbor who, in retirement, him and his wife used to go every fall to places like Peachland to buy peaches and such, to do canning, and he would save all of the peels and whatnot, and he had a major, efficient, top quality, compare it to anything, still that he built that was wired right. He had it plumbed right into his gas line.
No way.
And the home brew that he made was just just a blue flame, no taste, just burns your throat like it was Everclear, basically.
Yeah.
So we filled a gallon jug. We stuffed every petal into that jug, filled it up with this high-test alcohol, and let it sit for probably about a month, just shaking it every few days. And then I drained it all off, and we sweetened it with something. I might have even used corn syrup. I don't know why back then. But we sweetened it a little bit and watered it down to a more acceptable dosage. Like we cut the content to about 40% maybe.
Yeah.
And it was so successful. It was as good as Grand Marnier, for sure.
Yeah.
But it was so perfumey.
Right.
So we kind of got on this thing about it's perfumey, but it's as good as Grand Marnier. So you could go out and get, I'm going to be blunt and say shit-faced, but come home smelling like a rose.
You know what? I think I have a bottle of that at my house. I'm going to have to show you next time.
Really?
Yeah. So best garage sale I ever went to was Terry Willard's Moving Away garage sale. Where literally he opened up his house, his barn.
There.
Yeah. And there was a couple things he was like, I found some herbal chew, they call it. Like it was, I think he'd got it one of his trips to Hong Kong, and it was like this bottle with like this really cool, gnarly ginseng root in it. He wouldn't let me have that. But there was a couple other things that I found. They were in these really like neat glass bottles. And one of them is like definitely rose, and it's exactly as you're describing it. And I bet you that's it.
Well, we tried to do it again with cognac
Okay.
and with vodka,
Right.
and as many roses. It's the same procedure entirely, and it was okay, but it wasn't near as good.
Right.
And that's when I realized that, like, a lot of friends over the years say they've made some, like, peach brandy or whatever, and it's never quite as good as what you buy in the store.
Right.
And I think the deal is that the commercial producers use full strength alcohol to get
Right.
a total extraction,
Yeah.
right? Where when you use something that's already 40%, it just doesn't come out as distinctly.
Right.
There's just a tip: if you're going to do something like that, use Everclear. You can still buy it here, I think,
Yeah.
and then water it down later.
Right.
You know. But anyway, he was asking me, he's, well, how bad are your legs these days and stuff like this? You know, could you do another batch of that? And I said, well, it's a rare find to get that many roses, Terry, and
Yeah.
it's already just about done for this year. So it would be you'd need almost a 2-year. We'd need a couple buses full of school kids, I think,
Right. To go
to
out.
get like mini hands make light work. You know, but,
Yeah.
But that was something that he asked me about.
Oh, interesting.
Could we have that so that everybody at the conference could have a little shot?
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think probably the amount I have, like, it might have been a 750 ml bottle or less, because it's very ornate and it's about 2/3 full. So, yeah. And there's another one that's like some sort of mixture of who knows what kind of Chinese herbs. But definitely one of them is like rose, for sure.
That's the problem with people like him and I, is we
Like-
don't label things all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was so sad that a number of things that I'd put a lot of work into when everybody was emptying my house, a lot of stuff, like I'd made some really high tests. What's that called? Fire water?
Oh, yeah.
Was it fire water?
Or fire cider.
Fire cider?
Yeah. With like, yeah.
Yeah, and I had it, it was all ready to just get pressed off, and there was a quart of it sitting on my kitchen counter.
Oh.
And Lord, that just probably got thrown out
Yeah. Yeah.
after all that picking and grinding.
Yeah. Cool.
Anyway.
So it's curious because, I've done rose extractions before. Like, I love to do syrups. I'll put these in honey. That's really lovely. And I do have a little tincture of it going right now, but I've actually always used a lower percentage, thinking that, the higher percentage is like too much. It's too hot. Kind of like, making a tea and boiling it, in that sense. But from your experience,
I would differ.
96%, no problem. And in fact, you would say it's probably even better.
No, the little buds before they're even petals like that, those are all the spring growth, could be harvested for teas.
Yeah.
Even the whole branch tips,
Yeah.
the new growth, the leaves are good for teas.
Yeah.
It's astringent enough. We have better, but it's astringent enough. The leaves crushed would be good on mosquito bites and things like that.
Right.
The whole plant is pretty useful, really.
Yeah. I got to spend an afternoon with a woman, Rosita Arvigo. She's a herbalist for many decades, similar to yourself, but also as a midwife. And she said roses were a huge part of her practice with women and birth and delivery, and
Yep.
especially if there was maybe excess bleeding afterwards as well. Using, the branch, the leaves, roses if they're out at that time of year or not, but basically doing a strong infusion of that and then using it to help with the bleeding.
And does she call herself a midwife or a doula, or?
I think midwife, yeah. I'm not sure if, some of these women, they've just been doing it for so long. I'm not sure if they had the certification.
Yeah,
but,
they're not hanging a sign for
No.
They treat friends or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Underground healers.
right? The world needs more of those. So, I mean, that's why you do what you do, right? Help inspire the next generation.
Terry
and-
keeps saying the world keeps hatching new herbalists, so
Yeah.
we're doing our part.
Yeah. So you were out at the Vancouver Island Herb Conference recently, and you had the pleasure of just being around.
Remarkably good time just to sit down and have. It's since I like to just call it a nervous breakdown. Since I had my crash That's 4 years ago already. And there's so many people that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
And one of the first people when I walked in was Robert Rogers.
Oh,
and
no
we
way.
sat down and had quite a good visit.
Nice.
And then, ironically, when I was just getting out of Terry's cart, like this close,
Right.
as I got out of the car, like this close,
Yeah.
I just said, Peter. I haven't seen Peter Berkshire,
Okay.
who was a former student who
Right.
moved to Australia, and I know his whole family. And,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
the cabinet people, Danka cabinets. But it was just so funny because he was right there.
Right there.
And that I actually remembered his name after all those years. But he was one of the ones that was spoiling me all weekend, getting me dinners and things, you know.
Nice.
So lots of really, really good visits, and so many people, like Colleen Emery said, Blaine, I think of you every day at work. And I just, like, you're kidding, right? And she, no, I'm not kidding. I just...
Yeah.
So it brought out a lot of humility and pride, which may be opposites, are they? Anyway, it just felt good to be there, and I didn't need to be on a stage because I had so many people coming to me for visits. You know, I just sat in the corner and was well fed and busy the whole time.
Yeah. Did you take any workshops in? Anything stuck out?
I did. I did take a couple in. I barely. Somebody I was very impressed with that I've known for years but not known anything about was Tiffany.
Oh, yeah.
Tiffany Enns.
Yeah.
And totally liked her style.
Yeah.
In fact, when we were done and she was packing up, I said, Tiffany, are you like booked 6 months in advance, or do you still take new patients?
Right.
She said, she said, why? And I said, well, people still call me on a referral, and I've needed people to refer to.
Right.
And you're going to be at the top of my list now. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And she just kind of smiled and she said, because I've been trying to find somebody.
Right.
And then she's, given her heritage, she has a lot of First Nation background and plant uses. And now she's a Chinese medical doctor.
Yeah.
So she's got all the Chinese stuff. She started with her Wild Rose degree.
Yeah.
So like she has spent a fortune and a lot of money on education.
Totally.
And she's just so calm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I was really impressed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and she's based here in Calgary, so I'll put the link below if anybody wants
Tiffany Enns.
Yeah.
E-N-N-S.
Yeah.
And they had a little thing going for a while that didn't make it, I guess, with, it was called Lodgepole, doing classes and things. I think I did something for them.
Yeah.
I don't know what. Maybe.
Initially, when Wild Rose had kind of moved and shifted online, they wanted to keep the kind of physical in-person learning going.
Yeah, and Jean Ann was her partner there.
Yeah, through there. And did you see Jean Ann? Was she at the conference?
Oh yeah, she was everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, very worthwhile. Whether you're a beginner, there was certainly lots of, I'm going to steal Terry's expression, there was lots of herbal sprouts there.
Yeah.
And lots of alumni that were there from my league, enough to visit, but still find things like, I really, really enjoyed Ryan Drum.
Right.
Did a presentation on seaweeds.
Yeah.
And for a while, and I'm going to be honest about this, he had a Healing with Whole Foods book that I probably sold at least 100 copies of. And then one day, I saw him at a conference, and he looked really unhealthy. His skin was dry, and his hair, he just dried out. And I've heard people condemn vegetarians for being essential fatty acid deficient to certain people and stuff. But man, he was just, he's gone now. But the guy had a lot of film that was doing, it was sort of a requiem for him. And I'm embarrassed that I had that opinion for a minute. Maybe he was on an off month or something.
Right.
Because he did so much. Anyway, he had all these seaweed samples.
Right.
And when I had my last day on the island with Dorothy, the tide was out, and out. And we were walking on the beach, and I said, well, it's like a grocery store now that I know what to do. And we were sampling different kelps and things. There's one called sea lettuce, and you got to dry this one. But the first thing that he did, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but he had some kelp that had been soaking in a bowl of warm water, and he just stuck his hands into it and pulled up about a 3-inch wide piece of snot. Like it was just total mucilage, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of dripping a little bit. And he kind of took some in his hands and did his hair and his face with it. And so, I've got to try that. So it's like, there's 100% organic hair gel,
oh, totally.
which I use.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a lot of fun. So those were the two that I mostly saw, because I might have been just about to go to something, and then somebody grabbed me, and we got into another conversation, and then it was over.
Yeah.
You know, so I missed a few, but that's okay.
Yeah. You know, you need lots of personal connections as well, right? Those catching up in conversations.
But I can't. And good music in the evenings. I didn't stay around too late, but I was kind of in everybody else's hands, and if Terry wanted to go, then I pretty much said, yeah, okay, I could have gone with somebody else later. But so we were typically away from there by 9 o'clock.
Right.
And I think that's when the parties really start happening. But Chanchel is adamant that it's 100% drug and alcohol-free event.
Right.
So if you are going to do anything like that, you better be hiding in your tent.
Yeah.
You know, and take a breath mint or something. But so you know, just nice, clean energy, right? As opposed to, you know, some camp out weekends get to be pretty crazy later.
Right.
One of the ones that we had an Alberta herb conference, Donna, who used to work for me, and was it Pigeon Lake? Is that where it was?
Yeah, it moved around. Yeah, because
Okay.
I think originally Robert Rogers had started it, and I think it was more up
yeah,
north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just the North crowd.
Yeah.
And they were kind of at odds for a little while, but finally decided to join forces, I think.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I had left my camp. It was kind of raining out. And this is in the back of the Sequoia, and I had just with thermarests and really good sleeping bags and stuff, about a $4,000 bed there waiting for me. And I had some lights up and things, and I went back to the main crowd for a minute. I was looking for somebody, I think, so I was gone for about half an hour.
Yeah.
And I come back, and there's this blonde conked out in my bed. Long, curly hair, and I said, Goldilocks.
Right, yeah.
And I was really annoyed because she was soaking wet, so like the bed's ruined for the night. You know? I didn't wake her up right away. I was almost afraid to. But she'd been one of the entertainers there. I don't remember her name, but in my mind she's just Goldilocks. I wouldn't recognize her tomorrow if I passed her on the street. Blah 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 blah. But I can't remember how I made that work. That I managed to find a dry spot or something, and I said, "Look, I'm one of the teachers here. I'm not going to touch you. I'm just going to crawl in beside you. Okay, I'm just going to leave you. You're obviously a mess."
Yeah.
And around that time, she slid off the tailgate and puked.
Oh no.
You know, she'd drunk that much. So anyway, the next morning, I had one of these. I got it from Cabela's. It's sort of like a portable phone booth that's actually a shower.
Oh, right.
And then I had one of those. We used to use it for doing the anti-plague remedy. It's just a big burner that you could do a lobster roast on with a big pot, you know, just a big burner. And I would take that with an old canning pot to bring water to a boil and set it just outside the shower.
Right.
And then people had cold water inside the shower, and they could take, sometimes people got confused. No, I don't want to use somebody else's water. No. You're going to take fresh water, just then dip it in there so that one pot of hot water will do 10 showers.
Right.
So a lot of people would always... Anyway, so she was quite thrilled that I'd been a perfect gentleman, and I had coffee and homemade cinnamon buns for her in the morning. It was really odd. It's almost like, you know, we didn't hook up in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah, she was...
You just never know.
Yeah.
About at some of those events, but that was certainly a party fest. Some of those,
right? Yeah.
And some of the ones I used to do for Medicine Hat College, we'd have a weekend herb walk thing that was sort of it was the last. I'd be there in January to do a whole week with the massage therapy students, and then I'd come back in June for just a couple of days to finish up with blending. And then we all went out to Cypress Hills for a graduation party, and that got carried away because kids that age are like making vodka popsicles and all sorts of things. So invariably, I'd be driving home the next day because I had things to do with a hangover and wondering why I was trying to keep up with 20-year-olds, kind of thing. But those were campsites that you would book them, and they were far away from everything else. So you could actually be like jambanged at 4 a.m. and nobody would care.
Right.
Quite
cool.
private.
Yeah.
So we could get away with partying there. But anyway, we go from that to Clear Blood at Chanchel's place.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about. I haven't seen any details yet, but the Wild Rose 50th anniversary could be happening in Alberta next year, so stay tuned for that. And then I think with the Alberta Herb Gathering, last I heard, they wanted to kind of just take a break this year, so it's not happening. But hopefully next year they'll have something going.
Well, that probably had something to do with Donna leaving town.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because she doesn't live here anymore.
Yeah.
And I ran into her at the conference.
Oh, no way.
Great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she looked great.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, because I think it's Kaylin that's been organizing the Alberta one,
Okay.
and there's another gal that had stepped in to help too. So
We had, where was my mind going there?
Osprey.
Oh, yeah. For you spouting that after it passed.
Yeah.
I remember one day stuck in traffic on my way to teach at Wild Rose that evening, and about a 3-light delay getting onto 10th Street. And I was sitting there and just sort of looked up, and there were a couple of osprey pulling trout out of the Bow River. And it was so beautiful to just watch them. There was a couple of them and
Yeah. Yeah.
doing some pretty fair high dives kind of thing, like
Yeah.
swooping down. Yeah. And there again, you know, we're downtown and we got osprey.
Yeah.
Well, and eagles.
Yeah. For sure.
There was one day in the dog park, I just looked up, and there was an eagle sitting on top of the lamppost, looking at all of these little snack-sized dogs. And I wasn't worried because this is when I had my 186-pound wolf hybrid, right?
Right.
But I said, "Hey, everybody!" I didn't want to yell, like,
Yeah.
you know, and all these people were like grabbing little woofy, you know, because that eagle would have taken one for sure. You know,
Yeah.
there was no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
I was just trying to pick let's see, I don't have time to marinate it. Which one's going to be tastiest here?
Yeah.
That one's got a bell on it. I don't know.
No.
That one looks pretty. But yes, it's funny how we get things. But they stick around. If the river doesn't freeze over, they stay in town because they can fish.
Right.
If the river freezes over, they're gone south.
Right. Yeah.
But sometimes they get enough food from, there's ducks that live at the zoo, and there's a pond there that stays open.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, my ex-wife, took me there once to the bird sanctuary to watch. It's just hilarious to watch an eagle coming in and picking up ducks off the ice.
Wow.
Because they come in,
Yeah.
and sometimes they do this. I saw a TV thing on this where they had it set to classical music, I think, where
Right.
the eagles come in and they hit the ice and start spinning, and it was all going to classical music. It's just incredibly funny to watch. But they're such beautiful birds, right? And I take them for granted back home. We used to see eagles, well, often. A small lake up there always has an eagle nest.
Right.
And then on big lakes like La Ronge, there'll be several nests because the lake's big enough to support them.
Yeah.
There's probably at least 5 on the lake.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've seen this at the coast online, but we had it really happen to us one day, bringing in a lake trout, and for some reason it had surfaced. It must have been tangled in the line or whatever, because trout typically stay straight down. You got to lift them up all the way to the boat. They're staying down. But we were bringing this trout in along the surface, and an eagle came and grabbed it about here to the side, behind the boat.
Right.
And I can't remember if we cut the line. I don't remember how that ended.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You don't want to be battling an eagle for your fish.
there was an occasion I was fishing with my parents at a small lake nearby, and I was just getting bored with being in this aluminum boat, and I saw a nice little rock that had a bit of away from the lake slant and was covered with nice moss. And I said, just let me go, there's some big rocks. And so they got me out of the boat, and I was sitting up on this mossy spot. And it was so nice because the water was clear and I could see almost from here to the side of whatever fish were there. And I caught this little pike that I didn't want. And I got it, I was bringing it in, and it kind of headed over that way. And what surprised me was there was a mink watching the whole show. And as I was bringing it back, the fish was in the air, still attached to my rod, and was flopping along the rocks. And this mink jumped out, its back feet were still in the rocks, jumped out and grabbed the fish.
Right.
And I was playing,
Wow.
I didn't want it anyway, but I was hoping it would break. I was just worried about the mink getting the tooth or the hook caught in its mouth or something,
Yeah.
But it was just so funny. That was, so a few minutes later when I caught a walleye, I set it like right behind me.
Right.
I didn't want that mink stealing my supper.
Yeah, I once had caught a little tiny fish that then another larger fish came along and ate, and so then I had him on the line type of thing. So
Pike are famous for that.
yeah.
They'll it's happened many times where we've got, say, mixed fishes, but about 8 fish on the line, and you get back to the boat, and you got one more pike than you had before,
Right.
because it actually swallowed a small walleye, but then
Right.
it can't spit it out,
Oh,
so
yeah.
now it's caught on the stringer.
Yeah.
Another one I found fascinating was, this is before I knew how to fish, and I had my bow with me, and a girlfriend I'd been with for a long time. We were out camping on the Churchill River, and I thought maybe I might be able to get us some fish for supper with my bow.
Right.
And there's proper rigs for that, where you have the arrows have 2 barbs on them that spring out,
Yeah.
and so when you shoot the fish, you can't pull out of the fish. And they actually have a little reel
Right.
on the side of the bow. But I just had my old recurve bow. And I was standing on the gunnels, and she was just paddling a real slow J-stroke, so we were moving real slow. And if I just moved this much, they'd dart,
Right.
because they could see me there really easily, obviously. But we were moving along, and at one point I heard a motor, and I thought, oh, we're breaking the law here. So I got down. And then I looked at my girlfriend, Lynn, at the time. Lots of Italian in here with the high cheekbones, very pretty lady. And we were both so tanned, and I had a loincloth on.
Right.
And I thought, they're not going to stop us. We just totally look native, right?
Yeah.
So we just went back about our business. But all of a sudden, there was one just under me, and I fired, and it went straight through its head, and I had a kill shot right there.
Yeah.
And then I just realized the reason it didn't move is it had swallowed what we call lingcod.
Okay.
It has swallowed a lingcod almost as big as itself,
Right.
so it couldn't move.
Right. No way.
All right, and then when I filleted it, when I opened it up, half of the lingcod was digested already,
Right.
and the other half was still sticking out of its mouth.
Wow.
So it couldn't swim anywhere. It was just pinned to the bottom.
Yeah.
But like the head and a few more inches were the head was gone, and a couple inches were quite white, just bleached from all the enzymes.
Yeah.
And that just astonished me how
Yeah.
voracious pike can be.
Right. Wow.
They eat something their own size.
Yeah. Yeah, nature is really brutal, harsh. Can you imagine? I was flipping through a book the other day with my son, and I saw a picture of giant snake, I don't know, a python, something like that, and swallowing something whole, and it just reminded me of that story where how often would something get swallowed alive? How long would it be living? Right? Especially head out still, but you're kind of bottom down and slowly getting digested.
One of those shows that we're having fun here, but we're supposed to be talking about plants, right? Doesn't it? There was it must have been one of those shows about Florida, whatever, where they noticed something from a helicopter and came down and checked it out.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember which way it went here. The snake had eaten the alligator, I think.
Right.
Yes. And then the gator somehow was still alive
Right.
and clawed its way out from the intestines. So they found this
Jeez.
dead snake with a hole in it.
Wow.
I think that's the way it worked.
Yeah.
But they brought in, they talked to reptilians from all over America to find out how long, like you said, how long would that thing live or whatever.
Yeah.
And some of the scientists did tests with digestive enzymes and the hide of a gator to see how long it would take to break down. Anyway, it was a fascinating show. But it's like I say, it swallowed it and it clawed its way out. You could see all the tears in the snake's skin.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these guys are standing there in shorts beside one of those little Hueys in about 2 feet of water. Like you couldn't pay me to get out of that helicopter in a place like that, where there's nothing to see for there's gators that big and snakes that big, and you guys just standing there, and that amazed me. Yeah. Okay, one last fishing story.
All right.
I had at some point put in a fish finder in my canoe. I built a little bracket that I put a fish rod holder on it, and it was on a couple of little buckles so that I could put it in the boat. And it got easily removed, so I had a fish or a rod holder and place to hang a couple hooks, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I'd been going past back and forth where a little creek came into the main river, and I guess it would be in the downstream side behind a big rock. There was just a big fish sign. And I went past that thing about 4 times. The fish hadn't moved.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call it a day here. And this, my last pass, this fish came out. It was a large pike. And a ways downstream, it came out of the water doing something that pike don't do. This is something a trout might do. But the pike was almost out of the water doing a fish, like with his fins, like wiggling in the air. What's going on here? And it took me quite a while to play it in. And I didn't want it. It was too big to keep. I was just me alone on this island. But I brought it in, and I just started giggling because the big pike had hit. I had a fairly large lure, and the pike hit the lure. No. I almost forgot part of this. So the pike, yes, here's what happened. The pike hit my lure, and it went right through, so hard that it went right through its gills, and a little pike hit the lure.
Right.
And so as I started reeling the line in, the big pike had a little pike in its face.
Oh.
And that's what was making it do all these crazy dances, right?
Right.
So I didn't want either of them, and I finally played it in. I was just giggling the whole time, and I just snipped the line and pulled it out, and there was no damage to either of them. But craziness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I was doing the plant walk yesterday, somebody asked, like, how did you get into this? And, I think it came for me, like, my dad, he raised me, like, we had a big connection to nature, and, like, fishing was a big part of it. Like, we'd spend hours just on the sides of banks and walking, and, like, I think that's really where my deep connection to nature came from, which then, shifted to plants.
Right.
Yeah.
There was one that I did a few years back now. Obviously, everything's a few years back now. That I did with. I went out during the week before to harvest a few things, and so we did a herb walk here, in Edworthy Park, and then everybody came on the Saturday, and then everybody came to my place on the Sunday to eat all sorts of things that we learned about yesterday. Right?
Yeah.
So I had a bunch of things like cow parsnip at just the right phase, and things like that. And they were marinating in that bright orange chili sauce. It's probably a Thai product.
Right, okay,
It's orange and red or something. They've been marinating in that, and anyway, it was just a feast. So there was this couple that were deer hunters. They were sitting on the bench by the pond there in the backyard, and he just kind of looked at his wife. He was rubbing his belly after lunch. He said, honey, we've been walking by all this stuff for years, chasing deer. We've just been missing out completely. Maybe we should just leave the rifles at home and go harvest plants. That warms my heart, eh?
Yeah.
But
although the deer are good eating too,
Yeah, I still like venison, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and as you've shared, we've talked about uva ursi, we've talked about juniper, how those plants are really supportive of a diet that exists primarily on, things like red meat, whether it be it you know, the bison, be it deer, be it elk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even bear.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, that's the real main source of calories on this landscape.
Yeah, and that happens all over the world.
Yeah.
Wherever there's, you know, you think about how many Greek dishes are just full of spinach.
Yeah.
And your body can't handle that much oxalic acid without stimulating the kidneys, so you end up getting kidney stones.
Right.
And yet, every Greek recipe has parsley in it.
Right.
It grows wild there.
Yeah.
You know, so people whether it's a salad or, you know, pasta or whatever, you think about every spinach dish has parsley added.
Right.
To boost the kidney.
Yeah. Or tabbouleh, which is like parsley.
Well, yeah, on the side.
On the side. Yeah.
But I think that happens everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You know, with like all of the hot spices that you get in, like things like Indian food, those are to help you deal with some of the parasites are common in that part of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm quite certain that that's what makes studying plants somewhat spiritual. It's too organized all over the world to just be.
Right.
How could you just ever be an existentialist when you could just come out here and just see all of the uses? Like, we didn't take stock here, but we've probably got a dozen plants around us that have uses, right?
Yeah.
I'm seeing red osier dogwood over there that I used to do for just when I had my teepee. I just used to use the red stems and put a weave through it with a hoop on one end and then make a tripod with some chokecherry, and you hooked it over the tripod on two sides so it became a chair, a backrest.
Oh, okay.
So you had little backrests so that when you sat around the fire, you didn't get a sore back, right?
Right. Nice.
You know, so they were used, you didn't eat those, but you used them for furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. I had some good stories, good chat. Hope you've enjoyed the backdrop. We've been enjoying the view,
and watch
the
out for that
atmosphere.
wild rose thing coming up, because it's we had the 30th here,
Okay. Yeah. So this will be the 50th.
and this, you know, and that's it. Oh gosh, it's hard for me to accept that that's going to be 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Time flies, eh?
Yeah. Amazing. Here we are. Okay. We'll tune in next time. Bye for now.
Bye bye.